So picture the scene. We're sitting at the back of the big hotel room. It's November the 16th. We are the 29th of 29 awards to be given out on the night.
A lot of wine has been drunk by lots of people.
Andy and I are a little bit paranoid. So just like Frank, we were up against Mercedes and Santander. They were sitting right at the front of the hall. We were sitting right at the back of the hall, so we decided that we obviously hadn't won. And it came to award number 29. Mercedes, I think, didn't place, Santander didn't place. And as they started to read out the gold award, I turned to Andy and said, "It's us!"
And I was going, "It's not us, it's not us, it's us, it's us, it's not us, it's not us, it's us, it's us." And then Joe Brand said,
"It's us." Oh, Credit Suisse. So we would like to take you back in time and explain how we did it. My name's Helen Palmer. I work for Credit Suisse, for the time being at least. And I'm really pleased to be here with my dear partner,
Andy Costello. Hello, I'm from Kineo, actually not Credit Suisse. I'm head of customer solutions at Kineo, which means I head up the team of solutions consultants and account directors and work in business development. Please don't boo. Just before we start, I wanted to do a quick show of hands. It's the last one of the night, so let's get some energy going. Can I see how many in the room are customers or clients or purchasers, commissioners of e-learning or digital learning? To start with, please. How many people are on that side? One.
There's my team. Yay!
Hey. And so everybody else, I presume, are providers and vendors of e-learning. Is that right? Fantastic. Okay. Good. This will help because we want to talk about the award process and why we went for it, how we went for it from two angles, from the customer's angle and from the provider, and why it's worth us going forward and actually sometimes investing that little bit more than we perhaps sometimes would. And we're going to do that by asking 5 questions. These 5 questions really are for you to sort of mull over. You don't have to answer them now, but just mull over and think about as you're potentially considering your future awards. And at the end, if we've got time with the questions and answers, we'll dive in a little bit deeper. So the first question is, are you future award winners? What projects have you got bubbling away, or have you just delivered that might be considered for an award? Have a little think about that. Talk about yourselves. I want to see if there are any sort of positive faces there. There's somebody there, very confident at the back. Got an award winner. This is for next year, okay? Not if you just won, Frank. This is for next year. Okay, so this is the question that Helen and I have been asking ourselves since 2019, when we started going for this. We wanted to enter our award at 2019, 2020, and then we couldn't get permission to start with. Or maybe the pandemic started, I can't remember what it was. But we've been going for about 2 or 3 years for this, which is a double-edged sword. One, it's very difficult to then get a business case to keep going for your award, but it does give you time to prepare. So we kind of thought about this from 3 angles. The first angle from us, from Kineo's perspective as a vendor, what's in it for us? Well, first off, it's a celebration and a recognition of a trusted partnership. That's really, really important because to be able to show any potential future customer that we are serious, credible, strategic partners, we've got to have evidence on that. And there's nothing more, I think, in evidence in any of the awards than Trusted Partner and Team of the Year. So we wanted to go for this with Credit Suisse because it really, really demonstrated that kind of partnership that we built over time. That leads on to the second bit in this lovely Venn diagram, the evidence of strategic collaboration. Obviously, when you go for an award, you've all done it. You need to really demonstrate that what you're doing works and hopefully that you're adding value to your partner, to your client. And then the last one we've got here is a chance to offer something unique. Sorry about the spelling there. Something unique for a key client. I've been working with Credit Suisse now for since about 2016, I think. And it is a unique relationship. It's built on trust. It's a two-way street. And there is a lot in it for the customer as well, but it's a lot in it for us as a vendor because, as I said, we can then offer something to the client, which then holds ourselves to account, if that makes sense. It means that we are willing to put our reputation on the line, go for an award, and hopefully have an award-winning entry that will show that we're adding value to everything you do. And if you put those data points together, at the center of this very scientifically credible Venn diagram, you'll see warm, fuzzy feeling, which I think sums it all up perfectly, actually. It's given us all a warm, fuzzy feeling, and had we not won, we still feel like we have done. Helen?
So from my point of view, this has been a really long process. When I joined the team in 2015, the year after, we won silver actually for the same award, ALT, but I wasn't really part of the process. And then in 2017, we were shortlisted, but didn't win anything for best use of compliance. And so for me, it was really a long time coming. So why did I want to enter? Well, my team had a really challenging time. And actually our story goes back to 2018, where I had a team, there were a team of 5, it's now been expanded, but 3 people were made redundant, and I had to build the team again from Poland. So in 2018, it was about onboarding, getting to know a new team of inexperienced e-learning advisors. It was around sort of working with the vendors to get templates set up, to get a really solid core of who we were and how we were going to work. In 2019, we really started to get more detailed and more processed, so really refining our templates, thinking really deeply about the design that we were going to use, and our first sort of projects that were really successful came from that year. So we'll talk later about cybersecurity. And then in 2020, we really sort of hit our stride and became the consultants that we wanted to be. And so these 3 steps were really a way of saying, my team's really developed. I think we've got a really interesting story to tell, obviously in partnership with Kineo, but also the other vendors that we worked with and the way that we were really consultants within the bank. And that picture, which I really love, is from our vendor workshop last October, so with some of the vendor team and some of my team as well. So the next question, really, you've heard a lot about it today, is who will support you? I think it's really important to think about, where does your support come from? Who's going to give you the emotional support, the permissions, the budget support maybe? And you really need to think about that early. The first thing is to fire up your immediate team. This is a lot of work. Why are we going to do this? Is it worth it? I think somebody earlier on talked about, small organisations or big organisations with budgets. Credit Suisse is a massive organisation. It's incredibly hierarchical. And I can tell you, it was incredibly difficult to get permission to do this. You wouldn't believe it, but it's true. So not only did I have to get my immediate boss on board, but I had to work 3 levels up. And we also almost had to have the story before we began. Why should we enter the award? I had to persuade them that we were going to win, which is a bit of a risk. But it was, why are we doing this? What's in it for Credit Suisse? And so that was really the biggest hurdle. Tell your story as though you've already won. And the slide that you can see was an internal slide deck that I used to persuade people, why is this good for Credit Suisse? Why should we be telling this story? Get permission. I can't tell you how many levels of permission I had to get. And every time I thought I'd figured it out, somebody else needed to be involved. So email chains, different communication teams, legal, compliance, data, it was never ending. And as Andy said, we got halfway through the process in 2021. We had almost gotten all of our information together. And then I wasn't allowed to do the big survey on which the whole award was based. And we had to stop. And so you have to be ready to take a deep breath and ring Andy and say, I'm so sorry. We have to try again next year. So I think there are a lot of hurdles potentially. Andy, your challenges?
For the provider, 3 big challenges. These are all seem familiar to you, I'm sure. Budget being the first one. We said, don't worry about it, we'll pay for it. And then I realised that was actually a harder ask than I expected. Getting any kind of funding for non-immediate revenue-generating activity is quite hard, as I'm sure we all know. Particularly hard when we've had to forego it 1 year and then go back and ask again. How do we know it's not going to happen again? We trust Helen, we trust the relationship, we trust Credit Suisse, but she's already had the rug pulled under her feet once. How are we going to do it again? But luckily, we were able to. We were so confident, quietly confident, not cockily confident, about our award-winning entry that I was able to secure some funding. And that helped us get some resource. And the resource that was really, really valuable for us was getting an independent evaluation body in by the name of Chris Robinson of Boost. I don't know if anybody's familiar from Boost Marketing. But they came in and they really, really lifted our game. They helped us shape our story. They helped us structure the presentation. And absolutely critically, they helped us put together the survey that brought us our qualitative and quantitative evidence to then present to the award panel. Lastly, finishing touches. I had some great help from my marketing team at Kineo, somebody called Alex Treasure, who was an absolute treasure. But again, that's sometimes tricky to get because it's, again, not revenue generating activity. So, what if we don't win this? Well, it's still worth going for. That was the story, and luckily it paid off. Yeah, third story. What's your story and how will you tell it? That was what the main thing, again, that we were speaking about. And our independent awards body advised us really to think clearly around three main phases of your presentation. Start with a wild card, think of an emotional hook, and then provide evidence. Now, the wild card was there really to start presenting something that grabbed attention. The emotional hook was something that they wanted to leave a mark with, to make the story resonate so that people don't forget it. And the evidence, of course, we need to demonstrate that what we're doing works, that it provides value, and that it improves either something like performance, bottom line, ROI, whatever it is. So the first bit we've got in our first of those three strands, which is the wild card, we were lucky enough to get Pip Bunce on board. I can't remember what Pip's role is at Credit Suisse, but she...
Something banky. She's very
something
technical.
banky, okay, yeah, something banky. We previously produced an animation for the LGBT plus community at Credit Suisse on allyship. And there were some key successes. Pips was an absolute fundamental player on this, larger than life. And through the work that she's been doing at Credit Suisse, is now an advisor on the board of Stonewall. In fact, Credit Suisse became one of the employees of the year at Stonewall throughout that period of work. And the stories that she was telling us was not just about the effect that the work we had on LGBT plus community at Credit Suisse. For example, allies went from 5,000 to 7,000. But people who joined the bank coming out of universities who were just never ever able to feel they could come out were now doing so. And from this big corporate, if I may say, conservative culture, this was game-changing. Not only that, but what Pips was talking about was that they were getting outreach from schools where children and young people who had attempted suicide were getting in touch with Credit Suisse of all people saying, we've heard what you're doing, you big Swiss corporate bank, we want you to share that work with us. So this was the wild card, kind of grabbed attention from at the beginning of the presentation, and it worked. The second piece was the emotional hook, if that wasn't emotional enough. And we wanted to showcase accessibility. I'm aware there's a risk of conflating something emotional with accessibility, as if accessibility is something that's nice and we should all think about it from a heartfelt position, which is of course nonsense. Accessibility is something that of course we should be thinking about all the time because nobody wants to leave any learner behind. It's bad business and it's bad learning design. But this story about accessibility packed an emotional punch. You'll see here Drillen Castrati, he was one of the Credit Suisse employees. He was blind, he lost his sight as a child in Kosovo. And his testimonial there says it all. The expression click next or click here is pretty standard parlance, but when you're blind, the word here is no help whatsoever. Through working with Drillen, we were able to absolutely change the game, that the way that accessibility was viewed at Credit Suisse and how everything we do is accessible to every single employee, which of course is so important.
And just to add there, if I may, in the presentation, we put an audio clip of Drillen in there. He wasn't part of the presentation, but in that 20 minutes that we had, we played his audio clip where he told his story. And I think that was really, he talked about when he came to Credit Suisse, his manager would read out his e-learning to him. And when we found that out, we were really, really embarrassed and shocked. And that's what started it sort of 6-7 years ago, and then really grew and really improved.
Stood over his shoulder and would actually read every single word on screen. And that was the height of accessibility at the company at the time. And the last one is providing evidence. I won't dwell on this. We won't demo anything. One of the examples of e-learning that we created for what was essentially a piece of compliance on cybersecurity was about getting learners to get out of an escape room, a virtual escape room, by solving a number of cybersecurity challenges. This one has the project sponsor, Caroline, escaping from the escape room in a lift. And we've got loads of anecdotal evidence, loads of qualitative evidence from Caroline and her team. Some of it there, we can't go into the data yet, but we'll go into more of the quantitative data a little later on.
Oh, too far. So from my point of view, those are some of the examples. We had two strands, as somebody said earlier, we had quantitative and qualitative evidence. I think a really key point, if it's your award, is thinking really early about who your voices are going to be. This is related to the support I was talking about earlier. But for Pips, for Caroline, for Drillin, I asked them at each stage, people that I'd known over years, will you support us in this project? Are you willing for your name to be in the actual submission? Are you willing for your photo to be on the slide? So I think it's really important to keep asking permission and being very clear about how you want them to support you and to make sure that they're on board with that. And keep updating them, keep communicating with them. So that was the qualitative side. In terms of actually the hard data, we did two things. We did an internal Net Promoter Score, and I'll show you some of the comments there in a second. And we also sent this survey to 1,500 people internally. And this was the key bit to the project that was derailed in the first year and then worked in the second year. So we identified two separate groups of people from our LMS data. So 750 people who only ever did mandatory e-learnings, and a second 750 people who self-selected to do our strategic e-learning, so things that they didn't have to do. And we made sure that across both groups we had a range of hierarchy, of titles, of region, so we tried to balance those two groups out. I think we got about a 50% response rate, which was amazing. People filled in those surveys, and I think we had 10 questions, and really asking people to think about, over the last 3 years, what has changed or how do you view the e-learnings? And I'll come back to the results in just a second. In terms of the internal survey, this is to our project leads that we work with internally, so our internal clients, and we asked them if they would recommend us. And as we always say, we're going to round the 7.7 up to 8 out of 10, but basically people appreciated the fact that we not only challenged them in terms of what they thought they wanted, we're quite good at saying no and giving them alternatives, and they were also appreciative that we also challenge our vendors. We have no problem getting in between the two and saying, actually vendor, we need to do it differently. In terms of that big survey that we did, you can see that across time, every single thing improved. But the two that we really highlighted in our presentation was the accessibility of our e-learnings. And then the second one was the use of games. I can't remember what we said, games and other innovations, both things that Kineo had really helped us with. There were quite a few questions, there were quite a lot of slides, but this is the other important one that shows that performance increases over time with the people that did more of those self-selected e-learnings. And that was a really key part of our submission, was this quantitative.
Just to add on that last one, that showed people were coming back and doing stuff on multiple occasions, which is just unheard of with our industry, as I'm sure you will know. But it showed that when people were electing to do the learning themselves, they were absolutely confirming through statements and evaluation that the learning was beneficial in improving their day-to-day performance. And that really hit home in our award presentation.
So what are the challenges? We've touched on quite a few of them. As I said, politics and permissions were for me the two big buzzwords. Having perseverance, keeping going even when it wasn't really working, and really having the time that you need, the energy and the sense of humour. There were definitely high points and low points, but actually that process of putting together that submission that people have been talking about, it's 2,000 words. You can game it by having more pictures or the videos, but really building that body of evidence and being really proud of what you've achieved. And it's quite rare that we get to look back over a span of 3 years to actually say, those small incremental changes that we make then build up into something much bigger. And I think that was a really key part of our arguments. So Andy, your challenges?
Yeah, challenge for us. So I don't know if it's just me, but I don't know if anybody else is aware as providers and vendors of e-learning. In the old days, right, I'm going back to the 10 years, it felt to me that the awards would be sort of named or titled by with the learning provider's name either first or as part of it. Whether that's because we paid for it, I don't know, whether clients are now investing in these awards more, but it would be, you know, Learning Pool wins this, or Leo or Epic wins this, or Sponge or whoever, or Kineo. And what I've noticed over the years that the vendor seems to be featuring less and less, or certainly in the secondary category than the client and the people that own the project, which, you know, is fair enough. But we'd gone into this award as partners, and very much Credit Suisse as Kineo. We were happy to do the investment and lead on the award, but we wanted this to be a Credit Suisse success story. And as we were going through it, and I'd gone through those discussions about securing budget and resource and time and support, all of a sudden our independent evaluator, our independent body that helped us, said, by the way, you should lose the name Kineo from your award entry. Just go with Credit Suisse. So I had to go back to my, you can imagine it, go back to my powers to be and go, you know that award that we're entering with Credit Suisse? Well, it's not so much with Credit Suisse, it's Credit Suisse's. And I kind of thought, you know, obviously got a bit of pushback. I was like, yeah, hold on a minute, let me just check this, because really, and the view was from our independent body that helped us, we would have less chance of success if we used the vendor name. And that surprised me, but you know, I was willing to take advice. Thankfully, my lovely client here pushed back even harder and said, absolutely no way, this is a partnership. Yes, it's Team of the Year, but where we are coming in as providers is that we are an extended part of Helen's team, and I think that's where we were coming from. So we stood our ground. We did ask the question to the awards panel and said, look, will this hamper our chances? They said, absolutely not. Put Kineo out there, admittedly in brackets, in a smaller font, but we won't go there. And it went through, you know, so in the end of the day, it was fine to do that. But raising the profile was a challenge, and I was a bit nervous about whether we were going to be able to, as much as initially thought.
Most important question, what will you do if you win? Now that sounds like a really stupid question, but I promise you it's not. I thought we would win, and then I thought we wouldn't win, and then I thought we'd win, but I never really sat down and went, if we win, what's the plan? So, Kineo, what did you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are lots of things we did when we won, obviously. One included nearly throwing the award out of the window when I was dancing on the dance floor, but that's another story. Nobody wanted to put the award down, so these are heavy lumps of glass. So I should have been more careful, but it's fine, and I've brought it with me for you to take back to Switzerland. What do? We talk about it a lot, obviously, and not just as a way of going, hey, check us out, look at us, it's a gong and a medal. The way I put it to my clients who are thinking about award nominations is that ultimately, yes, it's a cause for celebration, but it has to be a measurable and demonstrable indication of what you're doing, and that what you're doing works. So it's about evidence. It's not just about blagging it and sort of boasting about something. It's about proving, in this award, Team of the Year, that you can form trusted strategic partnerships. And that evidence is so valuable for people in our industry and for our clients, because it shows that we take the things they worry about really, really seriously. We take those things like demonstrating value to their business, that we are willing to help them continually improve by finding time, cost efficiencies. And for me, the best part of that is that in some small way, I hope we've helped make Helen's teams heroes to the organisation. And I know that sounds a bit trite, and that we're in it to obviously develop business, but we're not going to develop business if we can't prove that what we do works. So that was it for me, talking about the good stuff.
So I would say try and plan your communication strategy well ahead of time, which is what I didn't do. I had to get permissions to do tweets on the night. That's how the bank works. When I got back, we got permission to have an intranet article, and we actually got into the weekly email from the CEO, which was a bit of a coup that first week. We've since done an interview on Learning News TV, which was great. We're obviously doing this event now. But also internally, I've done a few presentations around what we learned from the process and, you know, what led up to this. So I would say, assume you're going to win, plan some events, plan some communications, and then if you don't, you've still got the information, you can still use it in a different way. But I think it's really important to maybe think a bit ahead. I would also say, make sure you get a nice photo of yourself with the award. Luckily, Alex took a really nice photo of me, which was then used internally, which I really hated. But I think you've also got to be willing to stand up and say, okay, this is what we did. And also make sure that you have a nice picture of the award without grubby fingerprints on it, because I do not have a good photo, and he's now polished it apparently, but there you go. So, last slide nearly, if I can click. So yes, this was our ending point. I think it was a really amazing night and a really fantastic result. Bonus, don't forget to say thank you. Again, it sounds obvious, but when I counted up all the people internally in my team in Kineo, there were about 25 people, so they all got like a little gift bag that my sons helped at home. There's like an assembly line of putting things in bags and putting stickers. I emailed people, I made sure that everybody that had been a part of it got a very personal thank you. I think that can't be understated. And because my team couldn't be there at the award themselves, I only got permission from me to go. I got this image created that really is a sort of virtual thank you to them as well. I can recommend the website. It's called turnedyellow.com. So if you fancy being a Simpson, I'm not on commission, I can highly recommend it. You send in a photo and they create you your own little picture. Andy, top tips.
Yes,
so
just a reminder, really, ask yourself these questions. Why do you want to enter? What's your story? And is it something that's going to hopefully inspire the panel, if not yourselves and your clients?
And I think when you look back, it's easier when you've won to say it was a fantastic journey. But I do genuinely think it's a worthwhile thing to do. You will learn something whether you win or not. And I think looking back, looking at your data and your evidence is a really worthwhile part of your role as L&D professionals.
Absolutely. Be prepared for those challenges and enjoy the journey. And that's us. Thank you.